In lesson 2, we're going to talk about textual evidence. So in fiction, ideas are either explicitly stated or implied. So remember, the word explicit means that it is directly there, okay? When someone explicitly tells you something, they are giving you direct instructions or a direct explanation of something. So explicit, explain, okay? So it's directly right there, okay? I can pretty much copy and paste it from the text or whatever right onto my paper. That is explicitly stated. If it is implied, the reader has to make inferences, or they have to use clues to text to make their best guess. Okay, so basically, you're like that little detective, and you're using clues from the text, the explicitly stated things in the text. You're using those clues to actually come up with your best guess, or you're making an inference, okay? So when you're answering open response questions, you're using both of those things, okay? So you're using, when you're gathering text evidence, you're grabbing examples or things that the author is explicitly stating in the text, and then you're using that to help you analyze or break down the text parts and make inferences to help you understand. So your inference is your claim or what you're thinking, your explanation of how that explicitly stated text evidence connects back to your claim. Okay, so think about that. That's two things that you're doing. So let's watch a short video on the difference between explicit versus implicit.
So today we're going to talk about the difference between explicit and implicit information. The first thing you're going to learn is how to identify explicit text. Next, you're going to learn how to use that explicit text to come up with an inference or implicit information from the story. So what exactly is explicit information? Explicit information is going to be any information stated clearly and in detail, leaving no room for any doubt. But what exactly does that mean? So let's take a look at this selection from a story. The grasshopper laughed at the ant and said, "Stop your silly work and have fun with me." "No," said the ant, "I'm gathering food for winter. You must do that too." "Ha ha! Right now I have plenty to eat. Why should I worry now?" laughed the grasshopper. Based on the explicit text, I know that the grasshopper laughed at the ant. How do I know that he laughed at the ant? Well, it says so right here in the story. The grasshopper laughed at the ant. That makes this explicit information from the story. So basically, if you can point to it in the text, it's explicit information. So what is implicit information if that's explicit information? To help us out, let's take a look at our example from the story one more time. The grasshopper laughed at the ant and said, "Stop your silly work and have fun with me." "No," said the ant, "I'm gathering food for winter. You must do that too." "Ha ha ha! Right now I have plenty to eat. Why should I worry now?" laughed the grasshopper. Here I can say that I think the grasshopper is lazy. Notice here that I say I think. I'm not saying I know he's lazy because the story doesn't actually say that he's lazy. However, I can use clues in the story that lead me to believe he is lazy. The first clue that makes me think that the grasshopper is lazy is where he calls the ant's work silly. Because he uses that word silly, it means he's not wanting to do any work and is therefore lazy. Another clue that makes me think he's lazy is he asks the ant why he needs to worry about winter coming and not having enough food. This tells me that he's relaxed. He's not concerned with getting more food. He's not willing to work any harder. So the author is giving you, the reader, clues in their explicit text, and you take those clues and use your prior knowledge, such as people who don't like to work are considered lazy, and you can see the author is implying the grasshopper is in fact lazy. So if you can use any of the explicit information the author gives you to support an inference, you've identified implicit information in the story. So to review, if you can point to it in the text, it's definitely explicit information. And if you can use that explicit information to support an inference, then it's implicit information. So congrats! You now know how to identify explicit and implicit information. If you have questions, see your teacher.